Here's the problem with bringing up the Sepang 2015 incident 10 years later. People think time cleanses wounds. It doesn't. Time just buries the smell. And now out of nowhere, Loris Reggiani, some mid-tier relic from 1994 to 95 who couldn't score a podium if you gift-wrapped it in a straight-line race, decides to talk like he holds sacred knowledge over MotoGP history. The man is reaching into a graveyard to dig up bones that should have stayed buried, but he forgets whose grave he's standing over. It ain't Marc Marquez's. Let's rip this wide open. I never wanted to revisit this mess again. I avoided writing the third part of the saga on purpose because it hurts, because it tears down what I once idolized. I was a Rossi fan, madly, obsessively. I celebrated every win like it was a title. When Rossi took Assen in 2015, I lost my mind, broke a remote in that final chicane chaos. But then came the cracks, the lies, the narrative spin, the ego. And at Sepang, the legend bled out in front of us all. What we witnessed wasn't the fall of a hero. It was the exposure of a man who couldn't handle losing control of the kingdom he thought was his. And yet, here we are, a decade later, and people still want Marquez to apologize? Apologize for what? For not bending the knee to a 36-year-old emperor with a god complex? For racing? For not playing second fiddle in a championship he wasn't even a part of? Miss me with that noise. Let's break it all the way down. 2015 wasn't stolen from Rossi. He lost it. Full stop. You want to know why he was in title contention in the first place? Because Marquez crashed a few times earlier that year. Because the guy had a rough start. That's why Rossi got close. Not because he was untouchable. Not because he outpaced everyone. The truth is, he capitalized on someone else's mess. And then when that same guy found form and started biting back, suddenly he's a villain? Let's not get it twisted. Phillip Island wasn't shady. It was a masterclass. Marquez diced up that grid and won the damn race. Did he fight Lorenzo hard? Sure. Did his lap times fluctuate? Yeah. You try battling 3 different riders in the span of 4 corners and see how steady your pace is. But Rossi couldn't stomach it. He couldn't digest a world where the grid didn't orbit around him anymore. So he did what he always did best. He weaponized the media. He went nuclear in the pre-race pressers, called Marquez a bodyguard, accused him of fixing races, lit the match, stirred the pot. He knew exactly what he was doing. The guy wasn't stupid, he was strategic, but strategy became sabotage. Sepang was the breaking point. The incident. Not a racing move, a calculated mugging. Turn 14, laps it again, watch it slow, watch it from Marquez's onboard, then from the helicopter. What you see isn't tight racing. What you see is a man deliberately slowing down, turning his head toward his rival, widening his line and initiating contact. This wasn't clumsy. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was premeditated. The eyes don't lie. The body position doesn't lie. The brake check doesn't lie. And that infamous kick, whether it was a full swing or just a boot bump, it did the job. Marquez hit the deck. Rossi rolled on. And the world split in two. You know what really pisses me off? Dorna let Rossi race in Valencia. You had a guy, clearly in the wrong, clearly compromised by ego and paranoia, who just wrecked a rival in front of the entire planet. And the board didn't suspend him. Didn't dock him points. Just slapped him with a 3-point penalty, conveniently just enough to push him to a back-of-the-grid start. Not a sit-out. Not a disqualification. Dorna's plan, or they wanted to play it safe, allow Rossi to race in Valencia. If Lorenzo crashes, Rossi wins the title. But fortune played different. Lorenzo didn't crash, he won the title. They kept their cash cow on the grid because Rossi wasn't just a rider, he was MotoGP's business model. Let me say this loud. If anyone else did what Rossi did, if it was Bautista, if it was Crutchlow, if it was even Pedrosa, they'd have been benched immediately. That championship would have ended then and there. But Rossi got the privilege of drama. He got the final curtain call. Rossi's fall was not tragic. It was inevitable. It's funny how people forget the other stunts. Argentina? Remember when Rossi and Marquez collided and Marquez hit the ground? What did the world say then? Racing incident. Brushed it off. Cool. And Assen? Oh yeah. That wild last chicane where Rossi cut the track and still took the win? Nobody blinked, nobody penalized. Marquez said nothing post-race. He didn't whine, didn't cry. He took the hit and moved on. And now people want Marquez to apologize? You know what I see? Selective morality. Rossi fans drew their lines based on the name on the leathers. If Rossi did it, it was genius. If Marquez did it, it was betrayal. But guess what? Marquez was 22. Rossi was 36. One was a rookie god. The other was a threatened legend. And the older lion didn't like the cub snapping at his heels, so he threw the cub under a moving train. And now, 10 years later, Reggiani's got the nerve to tell Marquez to apologize to the sport. The same Reggiani who barely scratched relevance in MotoGP. The same guy who probably watches old VHS tapes of his career to remind himself he once wore leathers for a living. You don't get to pull rank on a guy who has more wins in one season than you had points in 2 years. Media, legacy, and the goddamn charisma machine. Let's talk about Rossi's true secret weapon. Not his corner speed, not his braking, not his racecraft, his mouth. The man built a religion around himself. And the media? They were his disciples. Before Twitter, before Insta, before every fan had a YouTube channel, Rossi had the monopoly on the narrative. Whatever he said became gospel. When he joked, it was charming. When he threw shade, it was headline gold. He shaped perception like a sculptor. And that's what made 2015 dangerous, because Rossi knew how to turn a crowd. He knew how to paint himself as the victim, the gladiator, the eternal warrior. And he painted Marquez as the snake in the garden, the young traitor who ruined the legend's final shot. That story sold millions. But it wasn't the truth. Marquez? He was just doing what he always did. Ride at 110%. Get in your face. Break later. Fight harder. But he lacked Rossi's media muscle. He didn't know how to play puppet master, so he got played. And the fans? They bought it. Italian rounds turned into lynch mobs, booing, jeering, spitting. The same guy who could pull 66-degree lean angles and save a front-end slide with his elbow was suddenly the enemy of MotoGP. It's sick. It's stupid. It's criminal. Lorenzo, the forgotten beneficiary. Jorge Lorenzo won that title. Let's not forget that. The man rode like a demon. More wins, faster laps, clean races, and he got buried under the headlines because two egos lit each other on fire while he quietly collected the trophy. But where did Lorenzo go after that? Nowhere. Fizzled, disappeared, retired while the others kept swinging. So yeah, he took advantage. But the sport? It lost bigger than it won. We should have been celebrating one of the greatest eras ever, but instead, we watched it implode from the inside. Marquez didn't lose that day. Rossi did. You want to talk about legacy? Let's talk about what happens when the smoke clears. Marc Marquez, crashed, bruised, insulted, defamed, still became a 6-time champion, still redefined the sport, still scared the shit out of engineers and rivals alike, still made Ducati beg him in 2025 to never leave their garage. The man broke bones and came back swinging. He crashed 100 times and never slowed down. He stared career-ending injury in the face and chose violence anyway. Rossi? He became a legend who overstayed. He kept riding, kept waving to the crowd, but the aura cracked. The mystique faded. He became a mascot. Still a hero, still beloved, but never again a threat. Not after Sepang. That's where the gladiator became a politician. And people felt it. Final thought. Stop asking for apologies from the wrong man. Loris Reggiani can keep flapping his gums. The fans can keep crying foul. But the cold truth is this. Marc Marquez doesn't owe anyone a damn thing. He didn't start the war. He just refused to bow. He didn't ruin 2015. He just refused to let Rossi control it. He didn't destroy a legend. Rossi did that himself, the second he chose violence at turn 14 and thought the cameras wouldn't catch it. So if you're still demanding apologies, maybe turn that energy inward. Ask why you needed a hero so badly that you let the truth rot in the shadow of a myth. This wasn't betrayal. This wasn't sabotage. This was the beginning of MotoGP's real age of reckoning. Marc Marquez didn't end Rossi's title hopes. Rossi did. And no amount of biased nostalgia, media PR, or washed-up ex-riders talking trash can rewrite that.